Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream, a special live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Saturday, February 25th. So what happened at the beginning of the stream on Friday is I said I was waiting for a phone call, text message, I'm not sure which one I said. And what the phone call and text message was about was that somebody was coming to my house and I needed a serviceman, a handyman type person, and I needed to deal with them. I never got the message or phone call. The person just showed up and rang the doorbell, which is better than a handyman not showing up any day of the week. So I had to end the stream very quickly, which means we didn't really cover all the news. Now, I had other plans for today on this Saturday, and those plans have changed. So, I could have either sat here and made some pre-recorded footage of Prey, or I could have caught up on the streaming. This gives me an interesting experiment with just seeing what a Saturday stream might look like. It's not consistent, certainly as far as the release dates. Honestly, I think the algorithm on YouTube only really considers a stream schedule consistent if you are streaming at the nearly exact same time, one every Monday, like once every 7 days, every Monday, every Tuesday, every Thursday, or every day. Me streaming and really only being able to stream usually on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday doesn't really work. And I definitely don't want to stream every day, and I don't really want to stream every weekday. Again, I'm not sure the algorithm would even understand that as a consistent stream schedule. And honestly, I'm not sure that consistency is really rewarded as much as YouTube pretends like it does. So, yeah. This gives me an excuse, to log in today and play on this Saturday a little bit more of Yu-Gi-Oh!, which lets me get a little bit more of the XYZ festival done, and possibly even get into playing ranked. So yeah, consider this a special continuation, I guess, of Friday. Of course, you really can't continue. The people who are watching then are not very likely to be watching now. But yeah, we'll go ahead and try this. I remember this Fiend's Mirror. Yeah, Beastly Mirror Ritual. It's one of the first early ritual monster summoning spell cards out there. It's kind of a shame Yu-Gi-Oh! Never really could fix the mistakes of the past as far as fusion being the way to summon most things at the beginning, and then realizing fusion doesn't work, so you need a power creep to have ritual summonings where the ritual spells can only summon one specific thing with very specific base characters as material for the summoning. And then eventually they did figure it out, the XYZ, link summoning, things like that, pendulum summoning, all seemed to be much more balanced as a concept. So yeah, we'll jump into the XYZ festival. And in part as an apology, and then this part as a pretense of this actually being news, I did want to show off this cosplayer that, again, I'm spending more and more of my time watching, looking at lewd cosplayers on Twitter than anything else. This cosplayer is cosplaying Morgan from Dragon Age, which is a very old game, saying she is the one and only Dragon Age waifu, which honestly it might be true. It's the only character. This is a great example of an outfit and how costume in particular caught the attention of cosplayers who are somewhat about showing skin and showing costume. but also caught the attention of people enjoying the art of the video game and the art of the character design, is that she had this sash bra throughout the whole game and this big necklace. And then, honestly, the rest of her dress and outfit is pretty forgetful. But yeah, Dragon Age, very popular game, certainly. For its age, I do recall playing it, but very possibly not getting to it. And apparently I did not play fast enough there, which that's not helpful for anything. So we'll leave it at that. Now I didn't run my macro a second time. I just am going to go through what was left as far as video game news. And in part of that, since this really is just an accountability section, this is really just a continuation of Friday's stream. There really isn't any accountability section to have. Like, I did absolutely nothing other than try to go to sleep with insomnia after the stream on Friday to wake up for the event that was going to happen today and didn't happen. So now I've woken up today and gotten ready for that event, and that's where all my time went. And some point in between there I also slept a little bit, but probably not as much as I should have. Honestly, I'm not sure that I haven't been just taking naps for 2 to 3 hours at most, twice a day in every 24-hour period, and have not actually slept a full 8 hours or even a full 4 hours in weeks. So I lost because of a surrender and I won because of a surrender. So I guess everything balanced out really nicely there. I do plan after today's stream to play some more Prey, and yeah, just continue to kind of grind on Prey. It is a very funny situation when you have a game that just has a little too much grinding in it, and you know you're just grinding. That certainly has been the thing that has scared me away from things like JRPGs. Although I did hear some news about how Dragon Age, the most recent Dragon Age game, actually has a lot of like options to actually remove some of the grindy elements, and let you breeze through parts, which definitely would be really appreciated, certainly if I was ever going to try and play the most recent Dragon Age game. But yeah, you really don't want to have to come back to a game like Prey and say, well, I know the next 3 hours is probably going to be me running through a level, trying to collect resources and just be safe about not wasting all my bullets. And a little bit of story will probably go forward, but that's about as much as I suspect will actually happen. I did see two news stories that I popped up. EA is reportedly polling fans on Dead Space 2 and 3 remake. The remake of the first game charted highly in the US last month, is the subtitle here. That is an interesting twist, certainly. I wouldn't have really thought they would have been as open to the idea of a 2 and 3 remake. 2 and 3 newer than 1, obviously, and still very playable, where there was a little bit of glitchiness in Dead Space 1 that would kind of justify the Dead Space 1 remake. All in all, the minor changes that were made to things that were kind of objectionable to the artistic intent of the game having some SJW things on posters or changing the gender of a character. Those little minor changes were not complained about much at all, so like it's pointless to consider that as a real failure on its part. So ignoring that, then you have to pretty much assume that Dead Space 1 was almost 100% success as a remake. And I think it is. I think minor quibbles aside, it is a huge success. So the things that I think were universally liked in a remake, as far as getting rid of elevators and loading and just changing the game so that you're effectively looking at not a shot-for-shot remake to compare it to a movie, but a different director's interpretation of a movie, is an interesting thought, because it's not something we've really seen a lot of as far as video games go. So you could potentially easily do that for Dead Space 2. I think it is probably going to be somewhat diminished returns no matter what you do. It also probably highlights that EA doesn't really have any good thoughts in their head either, because with Dead Space 1's remake, I don't think you make a Dead Space 2 remake that is going to be 100% in line with the way Dead Space 2 played out. I just don't think that's the smart way to go. You need to establish that this second bite at the apple with Dead Space is going to establish that whatever a Dead Space 2 is called should be very, very different. Just a completely different game, continuing the thought of the series. Instead of just remaking things, because the best case scenario here is EA remakes Dead Space 2, it's great, but there's diminished sales just because there obviously will be with sequels, and then they remake Dead Space 3 and it's great and there's diminished sales, and then we'll just be back where we were at the end because they won't have an idea in their head for Dead Space 4, which is really where they should just be doing right now. Is the Dead Space remake that came out should basically have been Dead Space 4. And yeah, I imagine their polls aren't going to really be able to account for that as much, for them to say, no, instead of trying to remake 2 and 3, why don't you just put in a patch called the Dead Space 1 remake, Dead Space 4, tell them that it is an alternate reality, and that the events of the first series did happen, are important, and that they're going to bleed through as potentially hallucinations by Isaac. And then make it a Dead Space 5. And just move on with the series. Now, ironically, some games probably would have been better in the long run if it was just remake after remake after remake. If Halo 1, Halo 2, and Halo 3 had been made, and then they said, hey, let's just remake Halo 1 and then remake Halo 2 and Halo 3, and then they had done that 2 or 3 times, that probably would be more acceptable to Halo fans than Halo Infinite, Halo 4, Halo 5, Halo 6, Halo whatever the number actually would be at this point. This guy canceled my attack. Darn it. I knew I should have tried to kill this guy. Meanwhile, you have this problem with the Callisto Protocol having ever decreasingly amounts of hope that it could be patched or tell a story that would be more interesting than what they've already offered. So where at least the Callisto Protocol tried to tell a different story with a similar type of feel as Dead Space. Dead Space and EA seem to be uninterested in telling a new story. It all has kind of the feeling of the Star Wars remakes and remasters and Star Wars special editions, which I couldn't even really tell you how many times George Lucas re-released in Star Wars Episode 4, 5, and 6 before he finally was forced to make some new storyline and make Episode 1, 2, and 3, which were not well received at all, and then eventually just kind of gave up after a point there and sold to Disney, and Disney made Episode 7, 8, and 9. And ironically, at this point, we're more upset with Disney making Episode 7, 8, and 9, I think Star Wars fans are, then really none of that's gonna kill anything. Yeah, I would say Star Wars fans are more upset with 7, 8, and 9 now than they remember how upset they were with Episode 1, 2, and 3 or the special editions. There was actually kind of a lot of love for I think the specialized editions when they first were announced, and honestly I didn't pay a lot of attention to it, so I could be totally wrong about this. But when the special editions came out and they saw what George Lucas had done, the minor kind of pointless changes to Episode 4, 5, and 6, it was kind of ridiculous. So it does create a weird situation where I would have to suggest to people, if you're answering this poll, how interested would you be in a similar remake of Dead Space 2 2011 or Dead Space 3 2013? I mean, they're 10-year-old games. At a certain point, it may be the standard thing to just remake 10-year-old games over and over again every 10 years. That's not terrible. We've seen younger games get remakes and remasters. But I really would like to see EA be more ambitious, frankly. But then they could also potentially buy themselves a lot of time if expectations are set somewhat low, because you're just remaking Dead Space 2 and 3 while you're secretly working on a 4 or 4 and 5 at the same time, or 4, 5, and 6 at the same time in parallel. The other news was probably news we were going to talk about on Friday anyways. Nintendo, though, has confirmed it will not attend E3 2023. The E3 show doesn't fit in Nintendo's plans for the year, which, yeah. Nintendo was probably the last holdout, really, because Microsoft has its own stage event that was happening in parallel at E3, and at any point they could decide not to do that. Or do it, but it doesn't make any money for E3, and then Sony had already pulled out many years ago, and Nintendo was the last to stick with it. Then you get into smaller companies relative to Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, such as Konami, Square Enix, I don't know who else would have a really big booth at E3. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get some announcements where we see even the middle size and the smaller large companies pull out of E3. Which might be fine, because if they really are just trying to make E3 like a PAX, where it's more about gamers coming together and hanging out with each other and playing game demos that they could still probably play anyways. Then, as a rule, that may be perfectly fine. Yeah, set this and end the turn. YouTube Gaming pointed out that Jacksepticeye has been doing YouTube for 16 years, and boy does he kind of look old in this picture compared to the young kid he was, I'm sure, 16 years ago. And inherently, as somebody who's been doing YouTube for 10 years, and both of us have been doing YouTube before YouTube Gaming was really a thing. Nah, I should have done the other one. That was a mistake, but whatever. It, to me, highlights just the massive difference of an experience you would have as far as success on YouTube if you did not get in at about the 16-year mark ago. Like, I've always kind of felt like I was 5 years, maybe 6 years too late. And definitely some of the people who I've seen have moderate popularity on YouTube, particularly when they're not being funded and supported by major production companies or some other thing like that, they definitely only have succeeded in my mind because they came in at the right time. Which is not to say that I think Jacksepticeye in particular doesn't deserve his success. I don't watch enough of his content to really make that decision, but I definitely would say if Jacksepticeye had tried 10 years ago, he almost certainly would be considerably less successful and very possibly wouldn't have had any success at all. That is an interesting thought, certainly, in the fact that I probably should try to find some way to keep an eye out for the new and upcoming streamers on YouTube, or content creators on YouTube, not just streamers, and see if any of them really succeed. A lot of the people I've followed on YouTube that have had somewhat moderate success kind of have failed in less than, I would say, even 8 years. I went and looked at Geek and Sundry and Nerdist, for instance. Those were two channels with big budget, big productions to them, and they are very much just shadows of what they were, and the faces that were pretending like they were the people in charge and the figureheads of Geek and Sundry and Nerdist aren't involved with either of those channels at all in any way. G4 TV, a very recent example of people trying to come back to TV in particular, but also YouTube, and failing fairly miserably at that. I do think PewDiePie, now that he's going to be pregnant, I think fairly quickly he's going to slow down even more than he already has. He'll make a video here and there, but very, very quickly he'll probably want to protect the privacy of his child and never show them on camera, and that's going to lose him some views. And then he's just going to be busy with the child in particular, and that's going to cause him to create less content. The relatively recent cancel culture actions have definitely caused a lot of YouTube content creators to fall apart and be canceled. too. But yeah, there's really nothing you can say or do about it. Yes, if I had a time machine and I could go back 16, 20 years, if I could go back to the exact day the first video was allowed to be uploaded to YouTube, I would go back and upload videos at that point. Angry Video Game Nerd just put out a video, and like, he doesn't really care about the content he's making, it seems like, and he definitely isn't moving at any real rate. He puts out like one video a month at most. Feels closer to one video a quarter. Angry Video Game Nerd, another good example of somebody who didn't really have a production company behind him at the start, and really didn't. He wouldn't have seemed to be the type that would have succeeded as a content creator. Of course, this is also exactly what has happened in other medias in the past, where for a long time you would have a radio people, radio personalities, DJs, that were very rough at what they were doing, and then eventually the radio stations got owned by, what is it, Sinclair Broadcasting for the most part, and that might not be the company that owns radio stations the most, but basically there's one, maybe two or three big people that own almost all the radio stations in the United States, and they have gone incredibly cautious on what you can say or do as a radio DJ. The era of having like shock jock radio DJs is long since dead. And if anything, it is kind of more that there was only a couple generations at most that got away with being shock jock radio DJs, because the radio presenters of the 60s, 40s, and 20s were definitely hamstrung in what they could say and do too. And yeah, at a time you would have early years of MTV being just wild and out there trying everything, but MTV now is very much a down to a science, we know exactly what we're doing and how far we'll push things type channel. Yeah, there was a time even when Fox was supposed to be pushing the limits of what you could do on TV, and even HBO at this point doesn't really seem like it's pushing the limits too much as far as trying new things. Inherently, that's what I'm talking about more than anything, is that there is a lack of people willing to experiment in creative endeavors once a medium becomes fairly established. We have a Marina saying hello. I'll assume that means hello. What deck am I playing? I'm playing the XYZ Festival, so I'm playing a modified Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck that, and by modified I mean I spent the bare minimal amount of effort on it to make it playable in the XYZ Festival, and left nearly half of the deck in, even though it's not actually playable. And so the strategy is awful, but good enough to win, and that's all that matters. Mostly I'm winning by disconnects and people surrendering anyways, and I've just been fairly lucky around that aspect. Alright, now I still have the same old problem with the tabs. Marina says, nice. Let's go ahead and play this. Big cycle through all these cards. Can I turn off the summoning animations? Would that save me some time? Special summon animations are off. Summon cut-ins on. One time only is the only option. On. One time only. Yep. It's strange that you can't just turn them off. Although I guess maybe they think it's really important to do that animation just to emphasize that you XYZ summoned. Oh, this is stupid. Let's click here. No, I didn't get through all the news. I know I was going in kind of a backwards method. Yeah, if anybody can tell me an extension to get the Firefox tabs to not line up and have arrows to left and right when you have hundreds of tabs open, and instead did something different, I would be very happy with that. But I bet you can't actually change those aspects. That would be my guess. One is two. The amount you have to click. Oh, wait a minute. I'm an idiot. You just hold down the arrow. So this is way easier than I thought. I just didn't know how Firefox worked. Literally just click on the arrow and hold down the mouse button, and then it works for you fine. Alright. Well, but better to learn something new every day than never learn anything new again. So this stream in particular may not be as long as the average streams, because we were already an hour or two into the Friday stream when I abruptly stopped. So yeah, and it's not like there's a lot of new news on Saturday. So I could definitely try to play a little bit more on Yu-Gi-Oh! But also, I still feel the necessity to talk, and then that wears out my voice, and it takes more of my attention span away. So it is definitely very arguable to not go through all that mess. And instead, that is not the one that I should have summoned. Because I could have done something different, but whatever. Had I summoned that guy, then summoned the other guy that I summoned first, then I would have had enough attached cards to activate the spell to bring something out of the graveyard to increase the attack of my character to about 3,000 with a direct attack. Now that that guy has done direct damage, I can now summon Zeus for 3,000. And we can end the turn there and wait until this person starts to play. And then we'll activate Zeus's ability. Yeah, we were talking about how Valve had confirmed the Steam sales and Next Fest schedule for the rest of the year. And mostly just pointing out that the winter sales on autumn sales and Halloween sales all happen a little too close to too many other events, Prime Day sales, Black Friday sales, and it's always very rough to decide to try and decide to buy video games during that time, which really leaves you with the summer sale between June 29th and July 13th, or the spring sale between March 16th and March 23rd, as far as your major seasonal sales that are kind of the best time to buy video games. And then each of these fests is just highlighting generic types of games that are somewhat popular. Noticeably, I mentioned in the last stream, it's kind of funny that there isn't an adult game fest, but it's not super surprising either, because Valve is just not all in on that idea. Even though Visual Novel Fest probably does have several adult visual novels highlighted during that time. In fact, it is notable and worth pointing out that, yes, there are adult games that get shown during a lot of these fests and sales, and so Valve isn't 100% hiding them, but you still have to go into the options and enable the ability to see adult games first, or the game has to be mislabeled as a not an adult game for you to see it, which it's about 50-50 as to whether or not game developers are labeling their games as adult games, if they are actually adult games. Now I've run into a problem here where I probably can't summon Zeus again, and even if I could just summon Zeus again, I'd only have 2 attached cards that I could do anything with anyways. So I've run out of the XYZ part of this concept for this deck. And it's not likely, with 400 damage, that I can win and do 6,000 damage. All he would have to summon is a 1400 attack monster. One time an attack, and he can win that way. It's probably smarter to just put this guy in defense mode and possibly try to put cards like this in defense mode and get damage that way, and that's not reasonable either as a concept. I guess the PlayStation State of Play did happen, and so now the video is available for me to play and watch. In the past, I have definitely thought about the idea of sitting through a lot of these State of Plays, Nintendo Directs, events, and watching them and trying to comment over them. But yeah, almost certainly making a video like that would get Content ID claimed on YouTube, so not very helpful. And honestly, I just don't think I have that much to say to sit through these events. Usually the events are just way too long, and even if they are fairly short events, Some of the Nintendo Directs have been fairly short. It is still easier to wait for either Video Games Chronicles or Gametsu, or even GameDeveloper.com to talk about what was said in those events with their press packets and their screenshots that are handed to them, because they just have more direct access. Access journalism is definitely a thing, if that's the right way to use that phrase, where a little YouTuber like me can't ever really compete with a big video game website, because I'll just never get those press packets and those press releases as fast or at all. The state of play, as I'm kind of letting it play in the background here, was mostly around PlayStation VR 2. I do see they're showing off a Naruto to Boruto fighting game of some sort, and like I'm still every now and then watching Naruto, and so I do recognize a lot of these fights and these characters, which I don't think really means too much, because what I'm recognizing is just the bad content of Naruto. I'm at like season 8 now, and it's really nothing but filler arcs. After Sasuke left, it's just like every single episode to maybe you'll get a 2 or 3 episode arc where Naruto is just the third wheel of some other group, and not even really the important main character often of the story. Not that Naruto was ever particularly that interesting of a character. That's where I think they mostly failed with Naruto. There's definitely room to potentially reboot that story and try and do something better. Is start with making Naruto a much more interesting character, with his own mystery and intrigue, instead of having him just be a happy-go-lucky orphan that magically has a lot more power, but often can't even use it effectively. Also, they could definitely have fixed their focus on the other secondary characters in Naruto, because there's just a lot of secondary characters that they aren't interested in, and they throw them out because I think they were somewhat popular, but that's about it. The best way to make an example of that is, here you have these ninja kids that that are fighting other ninjas, and yet they are incredibly unwilling to kill off any of the characters. There's a bad guy early in season 1, is pretty much the first major fight in the series, who gets killed off. And I'm not sure he actually was even killed off. There was a single adult character who was a tournament proxy, or tournament proctor, who was killed off early in the series. And then everybody else seems like they just get knocked out, and very often these deadly ninja fights end with the ninja people being somewhat on friendly terms and potentially coming back at a later season for second helpings. Which is just really ridiculous. Of course, if they did kill off more characters, it would only highlight the other problem with Naruto, in that it really is just a story of massive child abuse. I mean, you really can't call it anything else than that. You have this ninja village that is raise kids and is continuing to raise kids from a very young age to be weapons of war in a never-ending conflict-seeking culture that are literally taking jobs to go attack or protect people, mostly protect people, but they're all putting their lives at risk, and they have no hope of seemingly doing anything other than being ninja, since the entire village is only focused on the ninja people. It's just like an incredible sad story that you never see any parents that seem to care at all for their children in the Hidden Leaf village of Naruto. You never see them, the parents fighting really to protect their children. And yeah, I know I'm looking into it from the perspective of an adult, but yeah, that's definitely obviously part of the story. And I imagine if I was a teenager or a preteen watching Naruto, I would ignore that. It is definitely worse than like Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, because at least in parts of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, you see the parents actually caring about their kids, and while the kids are still training and putting their life on the line a lot, you often see like Goku trying to protect Gohan, and even I want to say Frieza, but that's not who I'm talking about. Vegeta trying to protect Trunks somewhat. And in part, with Dragon Ball, it's very quickly a situation where the whole world is in danger. So Goku defeating somebody is protecting the whole world. It's not like Goku goes out and takes money to fight people, and maybe they do that in the tournaments. A little bit, but not anywhere as much as Naruto does. Of course, it's stupid to talk about Naruto or even be watching Naruto. In a lot of ways, I'm just kind of wasting my time. I did also, I can't even tell you when I did it, watch a new series that apparently was made for Disney Plus called Extraordinary. I don't think it actually got released on Disney Plus. I'm seeing it on Hulu, and it's almost like this British, I would say, dirty, raunchy sex comedy type rom-com story where this girl, young woman, I suppose, is living in a world that is full of people with superpowers. Just everybody by the time they're about 18 to 21 gets their superpower, of some kind of superpower. A lot of the superpowers are not all they're made up to be, which kind of makes a lot of sense. Yeah. For instance, a person with a lot of cello ability gets super strength and then basically breaks their cello and can't play it anymore. And then there's like a character that's like magnetic and doesn't really control it, so just every now and then will become magnetic and have things attached to her. That's like one of the side characters. There was I think ABC, NBC, or CBS show, I'm pretty sure it wasn't a Fox show, that came out a couple years ago with almost a similar idea. The concept, I guess, isn't really that amazing anyways, but the way they did it for that show was definitely a lot more clean in its comedy, and it was not particularly as interesting. But yeah, I would also say Extraordinary is a show that you would like if you're a fan of something like The Peep Show or some of those British dirty rom-coms. I'm still on the PlayStation State of Play stream, and they're showing Resident Evil 4 at this point, and yeah, the footage they're showing now is a lot more appealing and longer than what they'd shown so far. It definitely feels like there's going to be maybe a complete emphasis on co-op, which might be a little weird, because I imagine you still won't be able to have a co-op partner pop in until Ashley showed up. But when Ashley shows up, I think she is going to be in the fray a lot more. And when Luis shows up, I think he's going to be in the fray a lot more. And he's not just going to disappear. And Luis in particular disappears 2 or 3 times in the story, and it just feels like the game couldn't handle having both Ashley and Luis follow you around, whereas now a modern CPU computer could handle having 2 non-playable characters follow you around and be kind of assistive characters. And I imagine that's what it's really going to be, and not actual co-op where somebody else can play. I would actually be fairly surprised if you could pick up a second player controller and play as Ashley. The Suicide Squad Let's Kill the Justice League game showed some more footage that had already been kind of leaked, or the same concept had already been leaked, that it was going to be this live service game and probably very grindy. So I really have to question if there is going to be some way that this Suicide Squad game works when it really feels like it's trying to be very similar to the live service experience that the Avengers game that they just kind of shut down, or announced they were going to shut down, played. One thing I would say that the Suicide Squad may have going for it is that the graphics may be better than the Avengers game. I was watching a one of those YouTube lawyer guys talking about copyright for some reason. I don't even remember why he was talking about copyright, but the thing that caught my attention there is that for something to be copyrightable, it has to be fixed in a medium, which is to say, generally that's explained as it can't just be a thought. You have to put it on canvas, in a book, put it on a video game disc, put it in a movie, put it in a song, things like that. It has to be a creative thing of some sort. And very specific things, I think, too. You can't just have, like, recipes in particular can't be copyrighted because they're not creative. And the concept of a dog can't be copyrightable, but the character of Scooby-Doo can be, was one example they used. But what caught my attention there is it said it has to be in a fixed medium. Well, in this new world in which you're interpreting the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which even when it was brand new was probably a pretty backwards and old law that doesn't really address things very well. Even now, though, we have the idea of live service games, which I think could be argued in court, and it'd be interesting to see how far you could get with this argument in court. They very possibly are not a fixed medium. If a live service game is on a server that is constantly being updated and changed, is that character potentially in a fixed medium at that point? Now, I don't think they'd go as far as saying every file on a hard drive is not in a fixed medium, because every time it's accessed, it's being changed a little bit with like the last read time or the modification statistics. But once you get to a live service game that's been shut down, I think there is room for an argument to say that game is no longer in a fixed medium if you've shut down the live services. Arguably, it should really read as more of a fixed commercial medium, to say if this game is no longer being sold and no longer can be traded or sold even amongst collectors like a live service, which that is the unique difference here, at that point does it really deserve copyrights? The concept of abandonware and the morals around respecting copyright are definitely very far away from the laws as far as the idea of abandonware or the morals of respecting abandonware. Personally, I would say if a live service game is down, you're probably at that point free to try and reverse engineer and pirate a game, like the Suicide Squad game. I would say probably down for 6 weeks to 6 months, maybe, just to pick some numbers out of the air, before something would be declared abandonware. But yeah, and if there was actual laws around that would actually be very nice. Like, no more Disney vaulting of things. No longer like Song of the South has not been available for purchase from Disney for probably 15 to 20 years, I would guess. And yet, I bet if you tried to upload Song of the South on YouTube, it would get copyright claimed by Disney in a second. Is that really fair at that point? Does a copyright holder's rights of first release or rights of not releasing something a second or third time, or rights of first sales, another term I've heard, does it and should it extend to the point where you can just have a product that has influenced society and people know about? Can you just hide it from society and take it away from society? Does the benefit to society, does it benefit society as a whole more to allow a copyright holder to not sell something for 20 years? Or should Song of the South for Disney, and as the example I'm using here, be considered abandonware and just considered public domain? It probably should be public domain anyways, just because of its age, but yeah. There's this consistent unbalance in that society needs a massive and ever-growing amount of entertainment, and content creators in a capitalistic society need to be paid and not starved to death while creating their entertainment. And so that's where copyright comes in, to allow somebody to profit off of their own creation and stop people from profiting off of things that they don't make. Although inherently Disney is not really paying the actors and writers and animators of the movies they make anywhere as much as Disney as a corporation and their management and CEOs are making off of their products. So there is somebody who is profiting off the work of artists and acting as a leech on society in that way, and it's Disney themselves and big businesses themselves. Alright, well, I just sat on that state of play and skipping around. The PlayStation State of Play didn't seem to have too much to show. Apparently a Hogwarts Legacy TV show is reportedly in development by HBO Max. I also heard that Warner Brothers has gotten the Lord of the Rings movie and TV rights, which I thought Warner Brothers already had the Lord of the Rings movie and TV rights, so maybe they lost it at some point, or maybe I'm confused here and there is a Lord of the Ring with no S series, and then there is a continuation of that called Lord of the Rings with an S. That might be the case. Yeah, I'm not sure which one is actually the right title when I think about it. It would be fairly weird for Warner Brothers to remake the Lord of the Ring trilogy movies as movies or as TV shows the second time, but not super weird. It really is a story that you could have a new set of actors take a swing at every decade. That's what you see with plays all the time, is you just get a new cast to do the same play and change how it is. Although in plays they often change a lot more than just the actors. They change entire modern takes on things. Jesus Christ Superstar is kind of a great example of that, where the 1960s Jesus Christ Superstar movie is set with to be basically about a bunch of hippies on buses in the desert, and then the I think it's 2013 PBS presentation of Jesus Christ Superstar has them in leather jackets and being more like revolutionaries in the 90s. And then the most recent Jesus Christ Superstar has a different twist and take to it. And then there was a Fox Jesus Christ Superstar where Jesus, I think, was black. And most of the characters were black, which actually is closer to accurate, frankly. But that is kind of uniquely to that play too, that it gets so modernized and changed with every new version, whereas Cats and Phantom of the Opera and things like that tend to not be so drastically changed. Somebody needs to take a better swing at a sequel to the Lord of the Rings series. Like, I know there's a lot of prequel stuff that happens in the Lord of the Rings books and the Tolkien stuff, but I don't think there's as much post the defeating of Sauron content, and I think somebody just probably needs to take a swing at that and give it a try. And maybe you just need to set it thousands of years in the future and potentially set it in something that feels like what would a Hobbit look like if they had cell phones, if they had computers, if they had electricity and all of that? Would that be too far in the future? Or should it always be a fantasy story tale? Same thing is true for like Harry Potter too. It's like somebody should take a swing at making a Harry Potter sequel set 100 years in the future and try to do those things a little bit faster instead of just remaking the old things or relying on source material that's from books people have already read. Oh, speaking of Lord of the Rings, there is a $500, you didn't hear me wrong, $500 Lego Lord of the Rings set that has just been announced, and boy does it look nice. But yeah, $500 is way too expensive for a set. Almost certainly $200 of that is going straight to the license holder. It is a nice set with a lot of minifigs, and it's basically the size of 2 big buildings, and it is an iconic scene and nicely designed, so it's hard to complain about the quality. It's just really impossible to not look at that price tag and go, Lego has lost their mind as far as trying to get money. I think I heard Fox News was also complaining about Lego because they kind of went to a second generation of the Lego Friends sets in that they are naming the characters and giving the Lego dolls, because they're not minifigs in the Friends set, names and personalities. One of the characters is missing an arm or missing a hand. So yeah, they're including someone who's differently abled, and Fox News wasn't apparently happy about that. One of them, I think, is listed as having anxiety. Notably, though, I don't think any of them were listed as really being romantically involved with anybody, because these are dolls for little girls, and there is no like Barbie or Ken equivalent to it. There is a guy in the Lego Friends set who they'll, I'm sure, say everybody in the Lego Friends set is a friend of each other. There's a dog, 2 cats, things like that. But yeah, it's hardly an example of Lego going extremely woke. And frankly, Fox News is grasping at straws to be upset about anything and everything in some of its segments. Let's see, should I just kill this? Let's see what that does. Yeah, even though I've seen that there's been a lot of sales and a lot of popularity around Hogwarts Legacy, I don't really know what the story is at all. So if HBO Max did make a TV show around it, I am really not sure what that TV show would be about. Let's see, moving on, March's quote free games from Amazon Prime Gaming have been revealed. A game called I Am Fish, Book of Demons, Baldur's Gate, Adios, and Far Away 3 being highlighted here. Let's see if there's anything else to talk about. Apparently Peaky Blinders Mastermind, Cities, Legends, Trapping in the Mirror, Collector's Edition. That almost feels like this is a hidden object game. Yeah, it is. So, yeah. I do have Amazon Prime, but I definitely don't consider the free games and the Amazon gaming a major reward for that. Honestly, I barely even consider the Amazon Prime Video a major reward for Amazon Prime. Honestly, I barely have an argument to even have Amazon Prime, but I still wouldn't get rid of it for the free shipping. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says a new anthology book of Bloodborne essays has been announced, which it includes an out-of-print interview with Hidetake Miyazaki. Now, yeah. Bloodborne is not Elden Ring. I have to remind myself of that, because you would almost assume that if they did release an Elden Ring book like this, it would have some George R.R. Martin stories in it, or interviews in it. But yeah, this looks like just a art book. It looks nice from that first page and the sleeve cover, cardboard cover here, and that. I don't know if I particularly care enough. Well, personally, I do know I don't care enough about Bloodborne. I haven't even played Bloodborne, but I'm not sure that most of the people that played Bloodborne cared that much about the lore to buy a book or an art book after the fact, after the hype has died down. It is a fairly tough sale at this point, whereas if it was included in a limited edition box, you could probably sell a few more copies, or if it was released much closer to the release of Bloodborne. This guy has got a lot of tricks. Deep Eyes White Dragon. Okay. Let's activate this. Toss this. Toss this. I'm just trying to get rid of cards to increase my odds of getting something that would be helpful. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says the next free Epic Games Store title has been revealed. Strategy Tycoon game Rise of Industry will be free to claim from March 2nd to March 9th. It replaces Duskers, which is free to download until March 2nd. I hope we have an article to talk about this, but apparently the next game from the creator of Res Infinite has been announced. And that's a pretty pretty amazing thing to see that creator be able to create anything, really. His game creations are so artistic that they really are just avant-garde and surreal, and just not something you really would have expected would have even been successful enough to justify him being able to make even one successful game, let alone potentially get a remake with Res Infinite, and now make his new game called Humanity. Suppose the first episode of this video game podcast is still somewhat video game news from Video Games Chronicle. I'm not going to listen to this podcast, but we can see what they're going to be talking about. Interestingly, it does seem like they've sent a actual reporter to the EU's Xbox hearing, or they have at least the information. Game Insider's biz actually sent somebody, and they're going to be talking about him or talking to him. From the headline here, though, it does seem like they're actually going to be talking about video game news, but almost certainly for your first episode, you're not going to put things in the headlines that betray that your podcast is just going to devolve into a bunch of people getting drunk and hanging out with their friends, or them just talking nonsense and joking around, which is what a lot of podcasts eventually boil down to, is that you have a group of friends or friendly co-workers that want to do a podcast together because they like each other, instead of focusing in on an actual goal. And that can work as far as a group of friends for a while, but eventually it stops being fun and it becomes a job. And it's probably better for any project, whether it's a podcast or something else, to as quickly as possible transition from being fun to being a job, so then you set more realistic expectations of how much time and energy and effort is this going to take to do. There is, as rude as it might sound, there's a real benefit to kind of having a jerk working in a project and saying, hey, look, we're not going to be friends. This is going to be 100% professional. We're going to be friendly to each other and professional to each other when we speak, but we're not here to agree with each other or just have a fun time. The agreeing with each other was a big problem that I started noticing, particularly with the Giant Bombcast, and just more LA, California type people in general, is that you have these groups of friends who are more than willing to either agree with each other for no reason, even though they probably don't secretly actually agree with each other, or they're more than willing to just back each other up. So instead of having 4 objective personalities with expertises in different areas where each person can contribute something meaningful to the conversation, you have 5 people that are all just agreeing with each other no matter what's said, and that leaves open the door for one person in the group to say something somewhat crazy, and then everybody else will still back that up and agree with it. And it's just like, yeah, I don't really need to sit in a room with a bunch of yes men, or listen to a bunch of yes men sitting around the table agreeing with each other. I also, in contrast, really don't want to listen to a podcast where every week everybody's just arguing extremely passionately. So you also don't want a team of just incredibly disagreeable jerks. You need a nice balance of both. To have the idea of potentially having actual measured debate is always the pipe dream there. It really happening is less likely to actually ever happen, but yeah, one thing you potentially could do if you were starting a podcast is just have the two have as almost an off-air practice. Just, we're not even going to record this, but let's just have everybody have their first fight on as if we're recording a podcast, and then we'll just lose that footage, and it should be potentially just like a dumb fight. But let's just hear how this is going to go. Yeah, something like, is a hot dog is a sandwich? Have one person argue it is a sandwich. Have one person argue it isn't a sandwich. Just some dumb debate like that, and see how that goes, and see what happens when one person gets upset versus the other, and see if they can still work together before you even start to bring in the public to see those kinds of conversations. Okay, let's go ahead and activate this. Moving on with video game news, though, actual video game news. DICE will be the co-developer on the next Battlefield single-player campaign. The studio is building a new team to support Ridgeline Games on the project. Forza Horizon 5's second expansion Rally Adventure has been revealed. Check out that article at Video Games Chronicle if you're interested. Let's see. We're making good progress here. I'm probably not really deserving as much progress as I'm making, but whatever. Like one more victory, and then I have the last of the 2 legacy packs, and then I can push forward certainly to get the title, but it's not a huge priority, and it doesn't matter if I don't get the title. Then once I have these rewards, there's no more reason to play the XYZ Festival. We can actually play ranked. Today's February 25th. Is that really enough time to potentially get up to a higher class in ranked? Probably not. I'll probably end at gold, but if I could get to platinum, that would be nice. Almost certainly not getting to diamond. So here's that article I was talking about. Humanity is the next game from Rez's Tetsuya Mizuguchi, and it's coming in May. A demo for the game is available now. This was part of the Sony PlayStation State of Play. You're a ghostly dog, the Shiba Inu, the famous breed from Japan, and it seems like in humanity you lead these paths of humans almost like a tower defense from one point to another, often fighting other paths of human. Let's see. Guide the masses through levels, 10 in the demo, 90 plus stages in the full game, filled with obstacles, enemies, puzzles, and unlockable skills, and browse a wide variety of user-made challenges, or build your own and craft videos. See a super easy to use in-game stage creator, which probably would have been nice in Res Infinite if you could have made your own stages, although it would have been fairly difficult to do it because I was a 3D on-rails shooter game. Humanity does seem a little weird, but like I said, Tetsuya Mizuguchi is a very weird, very avant-garde artist in the first place. So, inherently as a fan of Res, and one day we'll actually play Res Infinite and show it off on my channel, I think it's probably always going to be justifiable to play his next game, even if only to make a comparison to say Humanity is potentially way worse than Res Infinite was. I imagine the music is going to be pretty great in Humanity too, because it definitely was in Res. Moving on, March's 2023 PlayStation Plus Essential games have been announced. Battlefield 2042, Minecraft Dungeons, Code Vein will be, quote, free to subscribers. I think Code Vein is not one word, and it's interesting that Minecraft Dungeons is one of the options because Microsoft owns Mojang in Minecraft Dungeons. So even as there's this infighting happening where Sony is trying to stop Microsoft from acquire Activision Blizzard on the complaint that eventually they will make Battlefield an exclusive, is a Minecraft game that easily could have been an exclusive to Xbox and PC that is coming to PlayStation. Now maybe it's more of a case that they had already negotiated this deal, and so Microsoft would be in big trouble if they didn't actually deliver on that deal. That is a possibility as far as Minecraft Dungeons. Also, Minecraft Dungeons wasn't super successful or popular anyway, so it probably doesn't hurt them much to bring it to PlayStation. Let's see if we can kill this first. Just gonna keep on. Well, if that didn't work, then nothing would have worked. Probably. Let's see. Some of March's PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium games have been revealed. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection, Ghostwire Tokyo, Rainbow Six Extraction are included. The new Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League footage shows the team taking down the Flash. Which, okay. Leave it at that. The Resident Evil 4's new trailer confirms a demo and mercenary plans. The popular game mode will return as post-launch DLC. I kind of wish I could show just the trailer, and I wish they had chopped up just the trailer for Resident Evil 4. By this time next Wednesday, I imagine there will be individual chopped up versions of the state of play footage so that they could just show the trailer. It was quite a lot, certainly. Otherwise, I could just say check out the PlayStation State of Play that happened yesterday, I believe, and skip to the middle and you'll probably be in the Resident Evil 4 footage. I gotta say, Leon's hair, and even her hair, just seems like an odd color. It seems too grayish or too bleach blonde. It's almost like they're trying to make a connection of some sort that white-haired or near white-haired characters in the Resident Evil universe are something more common, or that it might even be some kind of special aspect around that, because there was also a white-haired character in Resident Evil 7. I definitely don't feel like the Resident Evil 4 remake should take too much influences from any of the more modern games. If anything, it should stick much closer to the Resident Evil 3 remake. And they certainly still paint themselves in a weird situation where you make this Resident Evil 4 remake, and then what? Do you remake Resident Evil 5? Do you try to do the Code Veronica stuff again? Do you remake Resident Evil 6? I can see remaking 5. I can't see remaking 6. Even if you do 5 and 6, at that point you won't really need to remake 7 again. They've really got to shift their priority after 4 and slow down. And in part, there's almost a legal reason to remake 4 in that they were caught stealing art assets and not paying the copyright for that. So there's this real danger that they might end up having to pay through the nose to the artist that they stole art assets for the original Resident Evil 4. And certainly wouldn't be a great move if they had to remove Resident Evil 4, the original Resident Evil 4, from sale because of it. It would be very funny if it got revealed that the only reason Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 remakes happened is because they knew that they had stolen art assets for Resident Evil 4. Although, it may very well be that even the original games of RE1, 2, and 3 also had stolen art assets in it. That's also a possibility. There's no way to really tell. Moving on, Zangief and Cammy featured in a new Street Fighter 6 trailer. There's also a new character named Lily that was introduced in that trailer that they're not mentioning. And people seem to be excited with Cammy coming back. Although they all look different in Street Fighter 6. I will say, though, that it feels like in that trailer, which I just saw little bits and pieces of, it did kind of feel like they are getting back to the idea of making something that feels more like a Street Fighter game, whereas a lot of the concept art and cover art, potentially, of Street Fighter 6 had a very different kind of art style to it that didn't feel quite right. At a certain point, you do have to bring the Street Fighter series away from Street Fighter 2 style art. You don't have to do that, but they're going to really try to do that. They've been trying to do that for a while. Arguably, there's more Street Fighter games with 3D art than there are Street Fighter games with 2D art. But yeah. It is definitely a problem that Street Fighter 2 is still the game, whichever version of Street Fighter 2 you're playing. It's still really the game people most remember. Not 3, not 4, not 5. Which I couldn't tell you a single thing about Street Fighter 3, 4, or 5. I have no idea anything about them. Although, in all fairness, I also don't know anything about Mortal Kombat past Mortal Kombat 2. There clearly was an era in which fighting games caught my attention, and that was probably when I was hanging out in arcades. And once I stopped hanging out in arcades as much, that's when I stopped caring about fighting games. And I don't think that's that strange of a story. Speaking of fighting games, Warner Brothers CEO says that a Mortal Kombat 12 is coming this year. The fighting sequel was announced during an earnings call on Thursday. It's a little bit weird to have a game announced during an earnings call, but whatever. They probably don't have anything to show, and that very possibly is too big of a problem to ignore, because they really should have something to show before they're making an announcement. They should have like a teaser logo at the least, and a press release. If you're responding to an earnings call, it almost feels like somebody just asked you, hey, when's the next Mortal Kombat game coming out? And he goes, oh, it's coming out this year, just as an offhanded thought. Which I imagine no CEO is really that relaxed and offhanded with his remarks during an earnings call, where they're most likely to be held to the fire if they lie. Of course, the problem with Mortal Kombat 12 is you gotta figure out what you're doing after Mortal Kombat 11, where they kind of had wrapped up everything, and overall, as far as the quality of the game, Mortal Kombat 11 was not particularly good and had either a live service or microtransaction aspects to it that nobody liked. Honestly, I'd say the fighting game genre is probably the genre best suited to just remake the first 2 or 3 games in the series over and over again. Just remake Mortal Kombat 1 and make it a completely different game with a completely different set of people, and just add more and more people. I think Mortal Kombat 1 had like 8 characters in it or so. Bring in 20-30 characters in 3D and call that Mortal Kombat 1 Remake, and then make a Mortal Kombat 2 that follows up on the general story and tells about the general story that happened between Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3, and bring in even more characters for that Mortal Kombat 2 remake. And then when you're done telling the first story that you told, start rebooting again. Because fighting games, effectively, the Mortal Kombat series in particular, are just constantly telling the same story. Anyways, there's some new bad guy. He's trying to take over Earthrealm. He's trying to defeat everybody or destroy the world or something bad. And you have to defeat him in a fighting tournament. Then there's a bunch of people, and they have very basic, short backstories to those people who are fighting in the fighting tournament. And they have different fighting styles, different visual appearances. So, if that is the generic story, and the one story you can really only tell for a Mortal Kombat game or a fighting game, then you don't really need to try to continue the story or continue the generations like Mortal Kombat 11 I think did, where you are aging the characters and making them older. Which doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's also worth pointing out that the Warner Brothers CEO, at this point, saying anything may have more to do with the merger and acquisition than anything else. He may be shoveling out a bad Mortal Kombat 12 because it was a project that was started on his predecessor's watch, or he may be rushing out Mortal Kombat 12 before it gets cancelled by somebody above him or replacing him. Moving on, this year's Call of Duty game will reportedly be a continuation of Modern Warfare 2. Maps and modes from the game will carry over to the new title, it's claimed. I have no idea what Modern Warfare 2 is really thinking or doing at all, because it does seem like they are working on the idea that selling maps and modes, or taking away maps and modes, is somehow a good business model, and I just can't really agree with that at all. I would think every Modern Warfare game, or Call of Duty game, I think each new iteration of whatever Call of Duty or Modern Warfare game you make should have close to everything that was in the previous game. And perhaps this is a specific case in which Call of Duty and Modern Warfare are cannibalizing each other's profits somewhat. And that there really should just be Call of Duty games or Modern Warfare games and not both. Particularly if you have this crossover. we'll see what we can do here. Just do that. Let's just keep on trying here. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Suicide Squad requires an online connection even in single player. Official FAQ confirms the controversial requirement. Yep. It definitely seems like the constant online probably is due to some kind of DRM like de novo, if I was to guess. That would be my assumption. But it may be that there actually isn't even any DRM like de novo in it, and it may just be a case that because it's a live service game and they want you constantly connected so that you could purchase something new, they've just made that a requirement anyways. I wouldn't be surprised if you could very easily hack out that requirement and mod out that requirement. If anything, though, it just really immediately smacks in the face of the problems with live service games and the lack of good customer experience focus that you should have in all games, and yet live service games really have no interest in that at all. They really do just want you to fork over money. I sometimes complain about Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and Konami being bad about monetizing its players. But I mean, that is a minor complaint to make, certainly. I imagine Konami is still seeing enough success on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel that it's going to stay around for a while. But yep, they really don't offer anything great that would make me want to ever consider buying gems. And in part, that's a problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! In that there's too many cards, so you would probably end up spending thousands of dollars to try to get the cards you actually wanted. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Hogwarts Legacy sales hit 12 million copies and 850 million, I assume, US dollars in 2 weeks. Which, yeah. There was a game that was several years old that they were celebrating having hit just 5 million shipments, not selling actually 12 million copies, just 5 million discs had gone to stores and been shipped. And as far as the actual money aspect, that almost never gets mentioned. Although, if you do divide 12 into 850, you would get, well, somewhere around $70. Let's see. 7 here, 84 there. Yeah. $70 off of every single copy sold, or more, on average. I guess on average is how you would say that. So yeah, massive success. Massive success. If anything, it's getting a little boring talking about how successful Hogwarts Legacy is, and it's going to be, mark my words now, very annoying when the Game of the Year events come around at the end of the year and something that is a massive financial success like Hogwarts Legacy gets literally snubbed by a lot of the Game of the Year awards. because simply there are just a bunch of social justice warriors, slacktivists, who are going to feel like they're accomplishing something by snubbing Hogwarts Legacy. Already we've seen a pretty major snubbing around Hogwarts Legacy, and just the fact that there has not been that much coverage of it or talk about it. There's been more talk about the controversies around Hogwarts Legacy than there has been talk or gameplay footage of Hogwarts Legacy. And at a certain point, I guess maybe that's where, if I had the money and the time, I personally, as a video game critic and content creator, could have stepped up and played Hogwarts Legacy. I also have the backbone and spine to put up with harassment a little bit better than I think most, or at least I think I do. I would be willing to take on the risk, certainly, than I think most people would be, to play that. Of course, my channel's not particularly that big, so if somebody just started to try and false flag my channel for covering Hogwarts Legacy or something, yeah, that could be a real big problem. That could get my channel deleted, and that's the last thing I would want to do, so it would be hard to take that risk. Almost want to make like a whole new channel at that point, but that wouldn't really protect me much. And I don't have enough faith in YouTube to not actually investigate false flags. I think there probably is a high chance that a channel could be false flagged and out of existence, and then YouTube would just green light it and say, yep, okay, we agree with the majority, we're not going to bother to actually investigate. Moving on from that speculation though, God of War Ragnarok and Elden Ring were big winners at the DICE Awards. Sony games won most of the awards, while From Software took home the Game of the Year prize. I don't even know who this character is from God of War Ragnarok, which I guess that means you've picked an odd screenshot, because I should be able to recognize it even having not played the game, as it is from God of War Ragnarok. Now I will say Video Games Chronicles did a better job than GameDeveloper.com did, in which they've actually listed each game in each category. Seemingly there's no numbers here, so I would just assume that there wasn't a runner-up awarded, which at a certain level, almost every game listed in one of these categories is actually a winner, because they are so filtering down so many games down to the top 5 to start with in the first place. Yep. And as far as award shows, it would kind of make some sense to move towards a more quarterly announcements, or give out 2 or 3 awards in each category. That's something that many other award shows don't do. I don't think I know of any other award shows that do that, and it would make a lot of sense to do that. The more awards you give out, the more likely you can have somebody excited about the awards you're giving out, I would think. Maybe that's not the case though. Maybe it gets more boring and less interesting. Right. Let's see. Moving on, a new Wulong Fallen Dynasty is available now, according to Video Games Chronicle. I'll leave it at that. Thunderful says no genre is off the table for the new SteamWorld games. It wants to continue taking the series in fresh directions, but isn't rolling out more sequels. The SteamWorld series really is a series that's just like all over the place. Normally, I would be able to actually accomplish something here by tossing so many beast warriors in my graveyard, but no such luck at the moment. Let's see. Moving on, PlayStation 5's DualSense Edge controller is now available at Amazon and other major retailers. The customizable pad was previously exclusive to the Sony PlayStation Direct store. Yeah. I'm still not sure if the DualSense Edge has all the features of the previous PlayStation controllers. Does it have the gyroscopic tilt aspect, or has that just been removed going forward? It's selling at a massive high price of $200, so you would think it would have everything you could possibly need, but who knows. If anything, I think that when you compare this $200 controller to, say, a $200 Steam Deck, it's kind of shocking what is there and what isn't there. Because the Steam Deck has like 2 speakers, but this has only 1 speaker. The Steam Deck obviously has a massive screen in the middle, too. But yeah. Steam Deck has 2 analog sticks, 2 sets of directional buttons. It has 2 touchpads. It has, I think, at least 2 triggers on the Steam Deck, if not a bump. I don't know if the Steam Deck has like an L1 and L2 and L3 like PlayStation controllers have. There's some fancy effects in which you can take out these analog sticks and swap them around and adjust things in the DualSense Edge, which aren't in the Steam Deck, certainly, but it does become hard to really justify $200 on a controller when that $200 could get you a full Steam Deck. Depends on what games you already own and what games you're actually going to play, by far. And then our last Video Games Chronicles article, as Baldur's Gate 3 is dated for PC and PS5, Larian, I guess is how that's pronounced, isn't rolling out an Xbox release. Relax, we still aren't playing the exclusivity game, is the quote. Alright. I have heard things about Baldur's Gate, but honestly, I couldn't tell you if they were good things. The name sounds familiar, and that's about all I can say. I feel like Baldur's Gate was a well-received game, but not really sure. Alright, so that'll bring me into the Gematsu articles. Microids is going to publish a tactical RPG for consoles and PC developed by the French studio Savage Level. I think we kind of talked about this. Doesn't seem like they really have a name or anything to say as far as what the game actually is. UFO Robot Grendizer, the Feast of the Wolves gameplay reveal trailer and screenshots are available. This is a cartoony 3D CGI animation style of a old, I would say 60s or 70s anime that was way more popular in Japan, I think, than in the rest of the world. Do I really want to watch the trailer for it? I don't think it's really necessary. It's something that you almost have to be nostalgic for. Let's see, we were talking about Shinji Mikami leaving Tango Gameworks. This has been updated. Let's see what the update says. You'll be leaving the studio in the coming months. What's the update? Bethesda Softworks had a comment. We can confirm he just decided to leave the games in the coming months. We thank him for all his creative lead and supportive mentor to young developers on the Evil Within franchise, Ghostwire Tokyo, and of course Hi-Fi Rush. So yeah, I didn't even really realize that he'd done anything with Ghostwire Tokyo. Inherently though, you have a problem in that Evil Within 1 had some problems. Evil Within 2 wasn't anywhere close to Evil Within 1. It was more of an action game than a horror game. Ghostwire Tokyo tried to be a horror game, but then had kind of a repetitive action aspect to it too, and was not likely to be well received in the first place in the West, and definitely wasn't. So the only successful game so far is maybe in part Evil Within 1 and then Hi-Fi Rush. So he's hardly 100% successful as being a mentor, I think, more than anything else. And generally speaking, even in Japanese companies, I don't think the idea of I just want to be a mentor to younger game developers is really appreciated or thought through. You have project leads and game developers and producers and things like that, but they don't tend to really sell themselves or sell their skills as being good at mentorship and bringing up the next generation. They're more selling their skills as on the idea of just keeping people on schedule and under budget. I just dropped my controller, by the way. That's why the prompts came up. I still desperately need to find a table to put my controller on, or I'm just going to break the controller. A top-down twin-stick shooter called Zombie Soup for PC is being published by Astrolab Games. Alright. The screenshots, though, not really highlighting the top-down twin-stick shooter aspect much. This might be something, it might be nothing. I bet this announcement trailer really doesn't have much to even show. I really don't know what you could do with the top-down twin-stick shooter game to get people to catch your attention, because they all just feel too similar. And honestly, I could see myself getting really interested in twin-stick shooters. If anything, I would say this seems weirdly like you're shooting in too small of rooms sometimes. And these characters look very strange because they are this short chibi version of characters, but the male blonde character here doesn't look like he actually is a kid. If anything, he seems like he's kind of an adult with two guns, even though he's wearing the backpack. And in particular, you look at, let's see if we can see the girlfriend character. Wait. Pause here. So here's a guy I would assume, even though he's wearing a backpack with two guns. And then you look at the girlfriend here, and she's got like a cleavage window cut out and fully developed breasts, which in the chibi style honestly really should probably be less developed and smaller, just because of the way they're animating things. So I don't even know if you're really saying this is the chibi style as much as Um, as much as it is just a weird small animation style. Moving on, the Famitsu sales have been updated. So we've got Wild Hearts for the PS5 selling really well, just under Hogwarts Legacy. As new, Tales of Symphonia for the Nintendo Switch selling in the 4th position. Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line in the 6th position. Tales of Symphonia for the PS4 in the 8th position. Tales of Symphonia apparently not for the PS5. Theater Rhythm for the PS4 in the 16th position. PlayStation 5 units, though, for what feels like the 3rd week in a row, have outsold the Switch OLED model. And arguably, if you added PS5 and PS5 Digital Edition together, you get 88. And if you added OLED to Switch Lite, you don't get 88. You get closer to 47,000 units. Of course, you also have a saturation with Switch units that just really doesn't exist for the PS5. Xbox Series X and S, though, doing particularly well this week too, outselling the PlayStation 4 by quite a lot. And I'm surprised that they're still even mentioning the new 2D SLL. It feels like that would be something Nintendo could have stopped making any more games on, or any more units of. The Caligula Effect Overdose is coming to PlayStation 5 in 2023. It's currently available for PS4, Switch, and PC. The Caligula Effect was one of these Persona-like Japanese games with a unique art style in which a lot of characters are wearing highlights of red with more white outfits. I'm not sure there's anything more I ever got from it as far as the story. It's rated M for mature. I can say that much. And it's set in a high school. And yeah, apparently there's over 500 students, and you turning them into these monsters, and then you get into these fights. The name Caligula Effect, I'm not sure I ever, because I didn't get any story, I ever figured out what the deal was with the name there. It's probably just a nice, evocative name to use. Definitely caught my attention. Moving on, Gametsu Says the Last Spell launches 9th. It's a roguelite strategy RPG that's currently in early access. You can check it out on Steam, I suppose. Interesting. A turn-based roguelite game with tower defense aspects to it. Well, it's on my following list, but honestly, I don't know if I would say yes to this, because it definitely feels not like my style of game at all. Let's see, and I don't want to bother to watch every release trailer for every game. I need to hurry up and win so I can stop playing. Raven Blood is an open world action roguelite game set in a Scandinavian fantasy land, and it launches March 30th. That sounds interesting. And again, going with a roguelite, but then having a lot of screenshots that I wouldn't inherently assume is a roguelike game. Release day trailer. I have to keep on playing. No, I'll just automatically lose and surrender. Set in a Scandinavian country, it does open a lot of doors I can see on this trailer to fighting a bunch of different types of monsters with different types of visuals. And variety is really the spice of life when it comes to video games, because so many video games are almost copy pastes. Let's see, let's go ahead and summon this and then activate this, toss this. If anything, I think the fact that I've succeeded so well with the XYZ Festival and the Legacy Festival that happened before this, just a couple weeks earlier, probably highlights that most people playing those two festivals didn't really know how to play those festivals and weren't playing particularly good strategies. It's been too easy, frankly. Behavior Interactive acquired Sock Monkey, the Middleburg studio to be renamed Behavior UK North, which you look at this map and apparently the indication is that there's another studio in Montreal and Toronto and Seattle. One problem I think you run into here is that unless they've tilted the map in some weird way, I do not believe Seattle, Washington in the United States is higher than Toronto or even anywhere close to parallel with Montreal. So it kind of feels like they've just put Seattle way too high into what would be either Canada or Alaska on this map. Not that it really matters too much. I'd assume that's the case. It would be really weird if these three places were marked almost in the wrong place, and then there aren't even offices there. Moving on, Gunya Monsters Physical Edition launches July 13th in Japan. What kind of game is this? It's currently available digitally. Apparently it's an action party multiplayer game. Let's see, let's check out the Steam page. Well, this is yet another game I think I either ignored or never saw. But you can kind of see that it's already mixed on the reviews, so I wouldn't bother to put this on the follow list at the moment anyways. Not with that poor reception. Fitness Boxing Fist of the North Star launches March 2nd in the West, which, yeah, Fist of the North Star is going to be a bit harder sell in the West, particularly when you're not showing the most recent JoJo character from the Fist of the North Star long-running series, which the most recent character would be Jolene Joestar, not this guy who is, let's see, I'd say that's probably Joseph Joestar or Jojo Joestar. from like the very, very first ones. And honestly, I have no idea how the Fist of the North Star series timeline lines up, because it definitely feels like they kind of jump all over the place. And I'm saying Jolene Joestar is the most recent one because that's what they're releasing on Netflix, but they're close to doing, I think, what's called the Steel Ball Run, which is something I think people are kind of hyped about as far as the Fist of the North Star fandom, which is arguably not that big of a fandom outside of Japan. If anything, what I would say is it would make a lot of sense if the person who writes Fist of the North Star was just hired to make enemies and fight sequences, and then there was a support group otherwise that would write a story and tell an actual narrative around it that's something more than a collection of people fighting people. Because I think he is best at creating interesting fight sequences and fight abilities for the characters and their stands. Stands being these magical creatures that fight on their behalf. And yeah, it barely makes any sense at all that you would have a fitness boxing game with those characters, but it does make a little bit of sense. Let's see. Should I show a Nintendo trailer? Not really. Yeah, it doesn't visually look that good even though the video is blurred, so that could be my own fault. Moving on, Project Skies has been announced. It's a free-to-play, cross-play, co-op action RPG from former BioWare, Riot Games, and Blizzard Entertainment developers. That's a lot of keywords, certainly. Like, this is not really showing me too much in the screenshots either. I kind of hope it's good, but it's probably a lot earlier in development than it really would want to be. Yeah, it's definitely an example of a game that you wouldn't really want to play until it's out of alpha / early access state. Let's see. Dead Cells DLC Return to Castlevania, which that's the name of it, has a final teaser trailer revealing a Richter mode, which is, I assume, another character you can embody and play. It is very weird to potentially play a Dead Cells game that is themed around the Castlevania game instead of Konami just making a Castlevania game. But I kind of have to assume that if this DLC is well received, Konami may very well try and get the Dead Cells creator to just make them a new Castlevania game, as Konami, probably because of the pandemic, has been forced to get back into making video games. Let's see. Moving on, Forza Horizon 5 Expansion Rally Adventure announced, which I think we may have already talked about that. The Finals has added a PS5 and Xbox Series versions. The PC closed beta test is set for March 7th through the 11th. I've never even heard of the Finals as a game, though. It's a first-person shooter of some sort. Looking at the trailer, and it is flashing images of pre-beta footage is what it's labeling it, which, man, we already have nonsense of alphas and betas that aren't actually alphas and betas, and then we've already had nonsense of pre-alpha, which is impossible, and now we're getting pre-beta footage. I mean, it's like they're trying to create as many different ways to lie and say this footage has nothing to do with actually what's on what we're probably going to deliver on, because we have no idea what we're going to deliver on. This game, The Finals, does look like it has a lot of environmental destruction in it, but it also definitely feels like you're more running and gunning in kind of an Overwatch type experience, and that there isn't any linear element to it or storyline element to it. So it was very, very hectic in watching the trailer there. We already talked about Hogwarts Legacy sales topping 12 million in the first 2 weeks. It would be surprising if that dropped off a massive amount, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did drop off quite a bit. I mean, there's only so many people willing to play Hogwarts Legacy, and then you're going to run out of people. A first-person roguelike game called The Foglands has been announced for PlayStation VR 2, Quest, and PC VR. Which, yeah. Probably never going to play any VR games, so this can only attract my attention so much. Really having a hard time trying to figure out what actually is going to happen in this game. But I'll leave it at that. Just come on. I gotta cancel. I'm running out of time here. In phase. Turn change. I have 154 seconds now. Activate this. Do this and this. Clear the field. Battle. Win. Now, if I could just get a quick disconnect, I would be done for today. And I need to be done for today because we've been going 2 hours and that hasn't. Yep. I haven't gotten through all the news as much as I should. A game called Green Hell VR is coming to PSVR in 2023, which I'm not sure what the game is actually about. It's a survival game. Yep. It's not a VR game. We're probably going to have a bunch of VR announcements back to back, I bet. In Dreams announces a first-person shooter Synapse for the PSVR 2. Probably shouldn't do this on the first turn. And wait until we can actually attack. Let's see. What does Synapse look like? Yeah, looks like that. I'm just going to leave it at that for VR games. A virtual reality adventure game, Journey to the Foundation, has been announced for the PSVR 2, Quest 2, and Pico 4. I don't even know what the Pico 4 is. If anything, this does highlight that Sony probably broke the bank and funded a lot of people and incentivized a lot of people to make VR headset games. Because we really have not had any announcements for VR games outside of the announcement of the PlayStation VR 2 for quite a while now. I would say at least a year. So I'd have to assume that Sony let people know under a non-disclosure agreement or something that they were working on a PlayStation VR 2 and they were having people develop specifically to target the PlayStation VR 2. I'm gonna choose to go with this one first. And end with this one. And then let's go ahead and set this like it's a trap and end the turn. Gamatsu says Destiny 2 Lightfall expansion has its light trailer, which I didn't know there was this many pale-skinned characters in Destiny 2, but whatever. Yeah, I'm not interested in Destiny 2, and I imagine if at this point the Lightfall expansion is just miles away from what a new player could possibly hope to achieve if they're to get into Destiny 2. A game called Tachia launches March 21st. This feels like this is one more of those adventure games where you're a kid running around an island. Let's see. Although this does seem like this might be a little bit darker. Nope, not so much. Does look like it's mostly a kid-friendly adventure experience. I don't know, it inherently feels like sometimes ideas just get stolen from other developers, and you have 3 or 4 games that basically have the same concept in a row. Yep. It feels like there's probably a generation of programmers right now that are either nostalgic for when they were young, running around freely on islands, which I don't know how many of those people actually did that, or they're straight up thinking that that's something that would appeal to kids, a la something like Pokemon Violet and Scarlet. Which I guess they're probably right in that case. We are dangerously getting to a point, though, where kids playing games where they run around and play outside is going to become uninteresting to even kids who would potentially maybe play games where they are playing games inside of games, or playing games where they aren't kids and they're just adults. Like, kids have been playing Fortnite, and if you look at Fortnite, there's a pretty big difference there between that and just in the turn here, that and Tachia. Let's see, the PlayStation Plus monthly games lineup and partial game catalog lineup for March have been announced. I guess Code Vein is one word. Didn't realize that, at least on the title of this. No, when it's written out, it's always been 2 words. It's just, it looks like 1 word on the cover art. Yeah, I would assume more kids are playing Rainbow Six Extraction than they would play Tachia. If I was to guess. There we go. Activate this effect. Should be able to potentially win here. Then activate this effect. Toss that. Put that face up in attack mode. Grab me. Another character. And I'll summon him. That'll put us in a good position to do half of his total life damage. Over half of his total life damage. We already talked about Humanity launching in May for the PS5, PS4, PC with VR support. Limited time demo now available. This is a much better screenshot of what I think Humanity really is as a game. Let's see if we can show some trailers here. It's basically a Lemmings game in the modern world, as far as just like, let's make a Lemmings game. So yeah, a bunch of puzzles and things like that. Meanwhile, I think they surrendered. There we go. Sorry. I was just sitting there watching the trailer. That's not good content. But yeah, I'm intrigued by Humanity just because of the creator, where I really wouldn't have been as intrigued otherwise if it was just some random person. In all fairness, if I saw this, normally I would just assume that this is some kind of ridiculous, like, low effort Steam game. Alright, well that is the XYZ Festival done. So we did the Legend Anthology Festival and the XYZ Festival this month. Got both titles. Yay for me, I guess, on that aspect. Really don't care about the titles. We now have the third special card art card tied into the Power Pros baseball collaboration. We do have a decent amount of daily quests though that are not done, and I probably will just do that all off screen. Really need to just talk about all the news, so I'm gonna leave it at that. There, and yeah, from up to 94 at this point on the Duel Pass. Alright. So the game Goodbye Volcano High launches on June 15th for the PC, PS4, and PS5. Let's see if we have the blur enabled now. Good. So we can focus on that. Naruto to Boruto Ultimate Ninja Storm Connections announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. The question, I suppose, is how many of these are Narutos and how many of these are Borutos. I'm not sure. I know. But whatever, we'll leave it at that. Baldur's Gate 3 launches August 31st for the PS5, PC, and Mac. Pre-order for 72 hours early access on console. Interesting that it's including Macintosh. There's not even really a tag in Gamatsu for Macintosh gaming, because Macintosh gaming and Apple gaming on PC is just not a thing. They don't care about gaming at all, even on iPhones. Wayfinder for the PS5 and PC has a closed beta test beginning February 28th and early access launching in May. Wayfinder being this game that I saw in the PlayStation State of Play presentation. The purple aspect to it made it feel a little bit like Darksiders 3 in what I was saying. This doesn't feel so much like Darksiders 3, though. Street Fighter 6 adds Zangief, Lily, and Cammy. And see, they're bringing back Cammy, but Cammy is in just like a totally different outfit and older. They're bringing back Zangief, and he's in a different outfit and older. And then Lily is new, and she's seems to be a younger, smaller, possibly Native American, I would assume, character. And yeah, this art style definitely feels more in line. Like when I see this gameplay art style, it feels more in line with Street Fighter 2 and what you would expect compared to like this intro art, which feels weird, or this art, which feels weird. Yeah, Lily might be not Native American from the United States. She might be more Mexican or even Australian. Let's see. Did they actually give any backstory as far as Lily as a character? I guess you have to kind of applaud they're willing to show some skin in this fighting game, whereas most games increasingly are less likely to show skin. She's a descendant of the Thunderfoot tribe, the same tribe as the iconic T-Hawk, who was first seen in Super Street Fighter 2. Small but mighty, Lily speaks with the spirits of nature. Okay. Cammy also came out in Super Street Fighter 2. Zangief. Maybe from a different game. I would say check out Gamatsu if you want to watch these trailers to get more of an action understanding. They are still using a terrible Street Fighter 6 logo, though. It would be so easy to just change the logo at the last second. But whatever. The Resident Evil 4 remake, third trailer demo, and DLC, the mercenary modes have been announced. Here's kind of a great example of where I think Luis will show up more in the game, because this sequence in particular, where you're fighting two gigantic characters like this, you were definitely all alone in that sequence. Although I think you are alone in the fight sequence visually and technically, but storyline wise, I think you actually had someone else, had Ashley with you, and you tell her to hide or something. These enemies look, this one in particular looks very much different from what they originally looked like. Speaking of looking very different, Ashley looks very different for sure. Here's her in one of her sections. Here's a on rails on a minecart section that is much wider and more varied, with multiple tracks and explosive barrels, people all over the place. So it seems like you'll probably go in circles multiple times. Here's a guy with a sledgehammer, which seems like that's new. Here's a altar, which I don't think there's anything like that in Resident Evil 4 that I ever saw. There was an altar in Resident Evil 4, but it didn't have people around it or really that much blood on it. Here's probably the island section. Here's Krauser. I saw some of the fight there. Here's Leon, who doesn't really look like Leon. There's Leon and Ashley running away from an explosion. Luis. Luis doesn't really look like Luis either. And then I guess this is Sadler. Yeah, and he doesn't feel like Sadler either. The character designs definitely feel off on all the characters. Whereas in the previous remakes, it didn't really feel like that was the case. But also, in all fairness, I haven't played any of the remakes or the original versions of the remakes. So, a remake of Resident Evil 1 characters or Resident Evil 2 or 3 characters means nothing to me. I'd say definitely check out this third trailer if you're interested. It will show you more of what to expect from Resident Evil 4 Remake at the moment. Suicide Squad killed the Justice League no matter the cost co-op gameplay and out of the Arkham Asylum behind the scenes. Video is available on Gematsu if you want to check that out. Mortal Kombat 12 to launch in 2023. I already talked about that. BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle has an open beta test set for March 2nd to the 5th for Xbox Series, Xbox One, and Windows PC. And BlazBlue Cross Battle potentially sticking more truly to flat 2D animation than Street Fighter 6 is, even if the actual fighting is... No, I think in BlazBlue the actual fighting is still 2D animation too. I really wish that was the case for Street Fighter. It'd feel more accurate. Master Detective Archives Rain Code details Kanai Ward Master Detectives. This looks like this is from the creator of Danganronpa, the next game. Trying to be something slightly different, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is actually fairly similar to Danganronpa. Just getting away from having a bunch of kids involved in murders, and instead having kids investigate maybe murders and maybe other things. This surrounded by a whole bunch of what I would assume are disguises, but some of them don't quite make sense because here's a bra and here's a skirt. So seems like a whole bunch of clothes, handcuffs. These screenshots don't really show too much though. They may be just establishing what to expect in this game, which probably is a good thing because you don't want people buying Rain Code, even if it does come out to the West, thinking it's going to be something that it isn't. Yi's Memory, The Oath of Felghana gameplay trailer is available, which this is, I assume, yeah, a Nintendo trailer. Yeah, it looks like a Japanese RPG. What you normally would expect, just little chibi action RPG characters running around. Doesn't look like an RPG Maker game, but doesn't look that far from those types of games either. Kinka Bancho Otome series is coming to the Switch in traditional Chinese starting in 2024, which, I don't know if that means that it's ever coming to English or the Western world, or if it's even coming to Japan. I imagine if you sold something and it was written in traditional Japanese, if it was written in traditional Chinese, a lot of Japanese people might be able to muddle through that, but they probably wouldn't enjoy it much. A Japanese release is under consideration, so like you're 2 steps away from this game ever being playable as a Westerner who only speaks English. Moving on, Wulong Fallen Dynasty launch trailer and final demo is now available. Check that out if you're interested. Line Games, or the Line Monster Rancher game, launches February 28th in Japan. It's a mobile monster raising game, and you have to install it on through the launch through the Line service, which is very popular in Japan. It's kind of like Discord, but does a little bit more than that. And honestly, I don't think Monster Rancher is really worth making a Line account for. Line is a decent name for an app like that. Magical Drop 6 launches April 25th for Switch and PC. Later, it's coming to the PS4 and Xbox One. This is just a match 3 style game. A game called The Grey Hill Incident launches June 9th, a classical alien invasion story set in the early 90s. It's coming out for the PC, PS4, PS5, and Xbox Series. You don't get to see too many people with literal tinfoil hats on. Apparently it's a survival horror game. See if we can get a better idea of what it looks like. Yeah, on one hand, this may be kind of a low effort survival first person shooter game. On the other hand, this might be a real attempt at making a game like this. I don't think the gray aliens are quite as well animated as they probably should be. But it's not a story that's that terrible. That really there shouldn't be a few more games like that. We have so many games based around zombies, it would make a lot of sense to have a few games based around aliens. The asymmetric multiplayer horror sequel Deceit 2 has been announced for PS4, PS5, Xbox Series, Xbox One, and PC. It's due out in 2023. Which, yeah. Looks like it might be okay, but it might be fairly dull too. I'll just leave it at that. So that is going to bring me to the games that I had left over. And this is really the best reason as to why I wanted to do this extra stream today, is so that I could then make a bunch of YouTube shorts and clean up my tab, the amount of tabs I have open. First game to come out on Steam to look at here is the University Life visual novel. It is a realistic art style, color palette, 3D CGI visual novels of girls' adult games. Pretty decent variety of girls being shown. Not a lot of sex scenes being shown though. There's like one screenshot in this whole thing that is actually showing a sex scene, and even at that, it's not even really getting particularly hardcore about it. It's showing intercourse, but the cameras are kind of zoomed away, so it's not as porny as it might be. It says it's English with full audio, which I question somewhat. Doesn't look terrible, but doesn't look great. And honestly, I just don't know what a game like this would be able to do to ever catch my attention at all. It does seem very much like odds are just close to zero that you could ever convince me to play one of those visual novels. At a certain point, I guess maybe if YouTube took a stick out of its butt and let you have like adult content, prominent adult content covered on their channel, then maybe eventually I would start to cover these types of games, because I imagine they'd be fairly popular. Although I'd probably miss the boat on that too. Like all of a sudden you'd see like PewDiePie covering adult games if YouTube let that happen. This polyturned game doesn't look like anything. We'll try and burn through these fairly quickly. Protocol 11 looks like it might be something, so I'll give it a follow. Let's see, Clive and Wrench is mixed, but I'm going to give it a chance because it might get better. Or I'm hoping it might get better. Probably more than I'm hoping. Here we have a Chinese looking game. Doesn't support English, so it doesn't really matter, but maybe with a little bit more work you might have something here. Never really seen a sword game really work, though. Like, it seems like sword play should be something that has long since been perfected in gameplay, but I really have never seen it work. You have like Dark Souls games are about the closest things. This is Japanese only as far as its language. Let's see, Castle Warriors. I think I'm going to say no to that. And then we have another adult game called Hentai Military, which is just a slide puzzle of flat 2D anime girls in military outfits, made up military outfits. Although one of the military outfits being all black does just come off as an SS style outfit from the Nazis. Which, yeah, there's been a fetish certainly around Nazi erotica for quite a while, even back when the Nazis was still a thing. Overall, though, I'd say this game is probably not worth it. They're asking 59 cents, but even at that, it's not really worth it. It's just a slide puzzle game. Next, we have a game called Nuke Survivors, which I don't think is quite polished enough. For 1914 December. Seems to be a visual novel around the December Christmas Eve truce in World War I. Maybe that's what it is. It's $2.24. It says it supports 8 languages. It really feels like it is just kind of all over the place in its visual style, and I don't know what story you're really even telling here. See these flat 2D animations, and then you see this more zoomed in animation, and then you see this very simplistic animation. It does just kind of seem like it's all over the place. I'll give this a chance and put it on the follow list, but I'm not going to give it a YouTube short. If anything, I'm running into the problem where I've made far too many YouTube shorts, and a level of curation would probably be nice, but really can't do anything. I can't think of a specific rule or way to curate it that would be anything more than just a stricter opinion of mine as far as what games I think people should potentially look at. And then one of the YouTube shorts that I put out today, which means I made it probably 3 months ago, is the game Choo Choo Charles was out of its early access or something like that, and something new had been updated to it. And so somebody's commenting saying, yeah, check out this game almost everybody already knows about, which that does seem like the major vast amount of responses I've gotten on these YouTube shorts so far is that people either say this game looks awful, which is fine. I do want to get people's opinions, but not a lot of people saying this game looks interesting. Which, you know, it'd be nice if more people were positive in every aspect of their lives. This doesn't support English, only French. That's an interesting twist. But yeah, the most comments I've had is people saying, being sarcastic and just saying, yeah, well, everybody already knows about this. Which I think I'll just have to grin and bear that kind of non-constructive criticism, if that's what I would describe it as. Otherwise, I would have to bend over backwards and not cover games that have come out of early access. And even in that comment, even in their own statement, they're saying almost everybody knows about this game. So doesn't it logically follow that I should still make a short about it until everybody potentially knows about it? I mean, not everybody is going to know about any one game. This visual novel is selling for $27.99 and it's Japanese and Chinese only. Puss in Combat Boots. Looks like it's an otome game. I guess you might call it a furry game, but not really. It's just humanoid humans with animal ears, cat ears. There's a Japanese word for that, and I forgot what the word is. Pokken Rocky Reshined. That deserves a follow. Yeah, regardless of that one comment, though, it is also worth mentioning that the videos showing Choo Choo Train, whatever, Choo Choo Charles is the name of it, yeah. A video had like 140 views when I saw that comment, and I checked again less than an hour later and it had 180 views. So people are watching it to some amount, and they're only 1 minute long shorts, so I can't imagine they aren't watching a significant amount of the 1 minute. Next we have a game called Hentai Blackjack, which looks like it is just blackjack with flat 2D anime girls on the cards. A collection of images, either licensed or found over the internet. I would say somewhat consistent in the zoom of the characters and the depiction of the characters, that they're mostly just focusing on showing breast on each of the cards, it seems like, and you're getting not huge focus on lower genitalia, and you're not seeing any actual acts being engaged upon. So as far as card art, though, it kind of would make sense to just have them posed and not try to get into any more details of any acts. Overall, though, it does just look like a blackjack game. It's selling for $2.39, and it's English only. Well, in a weird way, I'm going to put this on the follow list because this is the first adult blackjack game I've seen, and it really feels like that would be really easy to do. Although, generically, I would just like to have a blackjack game where you could add any pictures you wanted. I could see myself, again, if YouTube allowed adult content, I could see myself playing this game for a lot longer amount of time if I was just going to stream and play blackjack and just generally chat with people. I could see that idea. Versus just playing a regular blackjack game and streaming and generally chatting with people. Of course, generally speaking, I would think that playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Is much more attractive than playing blackjack. Yeah, I think the fad of people watching other people playing poker or blackjack or anything like that has long since dissipated. This game Twerk It Girl doesn't look like it's quite got enough around it. It is kind of funny to have characters with like giant butts and then them twerking when they get on the pedestal, but that's about all I could really say about it, though. Let's see. Next, we have a game called 11 Years Ago that either is just a horror asset flip game or is a very, very visually polished horror game, I would assume. It's actually very polished from the looks of things. So that definitely deserves a follow. We have a Sudoku classic game, which that deserves a YouTube short and a follow. Here we have another adult game called She and Rope, and I assume this is one of these like Chinese games where it's one pre-made 3D model of a CGI girl, and then she gets tied up, and then there's not actually a lot of nudity in it because in China nudity is frowned upon or not allowed. Like in this trailer, I'm seeing her shower in her underwear, in a black swimsuit type underwear or swimsuit. And you're seeing her in a business suit and tights. Yeah, doing the entire trailer. So I kind of feel like this is promising more than it actually delivers upon. It's $4.99. The mature description here, and this is a Chinese game, is there may be female back, abdomen, legs, and other parts in the game. May, and the game includes women being tied up. You can see it's English and Chinese only. And they're selling it in the adult section when arguably it really shouldn't be in the adult section at all. There's just no nudity from the looks of it in this game. What's funny is when you see these Chinese games with like a woman tied up, they tend to just be tied up. They don't tend to be doing the Japanese art style shibari, in which you're doing actual knots to emphasize the body or restrain the body in certain ways, and it's more of an artistic exhibition of going around the breast and highlighting the breast, squeezing the breast, squeezing the genitals, groins of both male and female people. That's what shibari is more about, and having kind of artistic knots. Whereas these Chinese tie-up games are, oh, they tied it around her ankles and they tied it around her thighs, just so she couldn't move, and then just simple loops, nothing. I think I would say no to any game that called Refund Me If You Can. Here we have a Bomberman clone called Boom, which doesn't look particularly any different to Bomberman, so I don't know why I would play it. So I'm going to say no to that. Hazard Horizon doesn't look like anything. Royal Booty Quest, is this an adult game? Doesn't have any mature content warning. Nope, it's just a card-based game. Doesn't look particularly polished. Samurai Sword Saga takes an interesting twist on infinite enemies coming from the left and right. I'll give that a follow. Diary of Lucy. Looks like it's an RPG game. Kind of RPG Maker-ish, but not fully. It's also very positive, so I'm going to give that a chance. And then here we have Hentai Eurocom, which you can only assume that this is a slide puzzle collection with some kind of story or themes of traveling Europe. That being said, it doesn't seem like there's any consistent themes here. It's just a collection of adult images. And one of the screenshots certainly is just showing a clothed version of the image and then a unclothed version of the image. It's 59 cents, claims to support full audio in all 103 languages on Steam. So, yeah. Say, definitely doesn't look like enough to get a follow. Nearly Dead, Live and Let Die. I think we could probably say no to this. You know what, I'll give it a chance though. I'll be generous. The Survivors. Doesn't look like anything. Demoria. Doesn't look like anything. Space Invasion. This bit me up. Put like 3 games out at the same time. And I almost would put this on the fall list, but it doesn't look like a full game either. Caroline's Fantasies is yet another adult game, a 3D CGI or realistic art style game. What's interesting here is that where usually these 3D games are static images, this looks like this is a full-on interactive posing the character simulator. Apparently part of her fantasies is being attacked or ravaged, perhaps is the better word, by aliens. So half of her fantasies is like exhibitions on a boardwalk, being nude, or being on a boat and swimming and being nude, and then being attacked by monsters. Seems like you're just going all over the place. There's a scene of them doing it in the pool, a guy and a girl doing it in the pool, and the pool is barely 2 feet deep. There's like 3 ways. It seems like it's kind of all over the place. There's perhaps a little bit of lack of polish here. Here's a scene of her dressed up as like a slave in Arabian times. There's a lot of variety here though. So like for the exchange of variety, here's her dressed up like Alice in Wonderland, I guess. For the variety, you are maybe losing a little bit of the polish, but it does seem like you can see quite more variety than you normally would see in any adult game. It's selling for $16.99. And in a weird way, I guess I'm going to put this on the fall list just because I'd like to see if there's a massive more reaction to a game like this where it seems like you can control more things, because the simulator aspect is something that I really haven't seen on Steam, but it is something that I have seen elsewhere, that there are at least a few games out there where you kind of have more control on setting the scene yourself, or at the very least it is at least way more varied than most adult games, which are very generic often and boring. For the 6 or 7 different fantasy scenes in that one game, you generally would have seen them try to sell almost the exact same game 6 or 7 different times for each scene. This game, Jash, I'll give it a chance. Here we have a game called Catboy Creator, which looks like it literally is just a creator to make a Catboy. And so I'll say no to that. Gyro Gunner or Gyro Gunner. I think we can say no to that. VI Re-Racers. Is this a virtual reality game? Let's say no to this. It seems too bare bones. My Time. Is this an adult game? No, it's an English and Chinese game. Seems like it's a room decoration game. Yeah, nothing there of interest. Larry's New Wheelchair. I don't see a lot of games with characters in wheelchairs, and this feels like this is just a joke garbage game. Kerbal Space Program 2. This one deserves a follow and a short as far as its relevancy. That being said, it is worth pointing out that I've seen some people cover Kerbal Space Program 2 as somebody who kind of enjoyed a small amount of Kerbal Space Program 1, and they all seem to pretty much say it's a mess. It's a garbage game that really shouldn't be in early access or even released. At this point, it both is in a situation where it should have been released way earlier than this point, and it should be in a much better state. And the problem with Kerbal Space Program 2, in case you don't know the drama around it, is that the publisher, private division I believe, basically bought Kerbal Space Program 1 and the rights to it, and then fired all the coders and programmers, which at a certain level, if you'd fired all the coders and programmers from KSP1 and hired new programmers who were better, nobody would have complained. But now that this game has been released in a very bad situation, bad state, it's only highlighted the fact that they made a greedy, bad decision. Yeah, and I don't know if people are going to really stay around and wait around to see if KSP ever becomes good as far as its sequel game. They probably could move to a different game very easily that would be better as far as simulating space travel. Is this an adult game? Seems like it, but it isn't. Ever since I started looking at adult games, I have to just ask myself that every time. Angels on Tanks. Alright, so you've got some girls animated. Apparently they are controlling the tanks, but doesn't seem very consistent in this art style. While you're really seeing it. And it's not even a great art style anyways. So I'd say no to that. Dracula Defense. That's probably just trying to create name confusion with Vampire Survivors. So I think we can dismiss that. We definitely should have more space sim games out there. But they should be good too. I literally saw someone try and play Kerbal Space Program 2, and they could not launch their game at all. The entire just application and some automatic save file happened, and in that automatic save file you can now no longer launch the game. It just crashes on launch, which that's completely unacceptable. Okay, so we've gone through all the games, which now leaves me a long list of games to make YouTube shorts off of, which is just an automated process, so that's easy enough to get around and do. So then that just leaves me with potentially scrolling down my Twitter feed and seeing if there's any new news on this special Saturday stream to talk about. Otherwise, we will be done for the day. And yeah, I probably will get some Prey footage recorded today, but no promises. And then on Sunday, I'll probably get some more footage done, but no promises. And we'll be back on Monday, back to regular streaming schedules. It would kind of suck on some levels if it turned out that I got a lot of views today on Saturday streaming. I could certainly think about doing something different and streaming only on Saturdays if that was a consistent thing. But then it would be a ton of news, just a ton of stuff to talk about if I streamed only on Saturdays. I could potentially skip Fridays and stream on Saturdays because the views on Fridays tend to be extremely low anyways. But yeah, that would be about the only thing I could do. And that would just be a weird change in the schedule, but you know, change isn't inherently good or bad. So I should just consider going with the flow of who is where and who has free time to watch a stream. Yeah, there's nothing on my feed, on my Twitter feed worth talking about. Yeah, off screen I also have a decent reason to play some more and get some daily quests done. So it's kind of a lot of daily quests, and these all end in 2 days because February ends in 2 days. Alright, well, that's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.